I'm very interested in what transpires at YF3. I'm very concerned about getting a decent ecological cleanup on all federal properties, either transferring or remaining in federal ownership, because the federal government, even the Department of Interior, is not that great at taking care of the environment. So on Friday, September 16th, Myriam and I visited YF3 that is undergoing further investigation to determine whether or not petroleum contamination that is extensive in that area is adversely affecting the bay. We parked in the construction parking area on Northgate Road and took a rather precarious social trail that leads down to a not much of a beach, because, and I'll get into why in a minute. The fuel line F03 can be seen running along the cliff. It's still intact and it's still up there, and you can touch it and walk right past it. So it hasn't been fully removed. It wasn't the best time to visit that site, but given the fact that we weren't getting in September any good low tides. They were all pretty crummy, except for things at like 12 o'clock at night. And
then you can't see.
And yeah, and then Myriam and I did not feel like getting out of bed and coming over here at 12 o'clock at night to stumble around in the dark. So we went at a slightly inopportune time, just before sunset. But I wanted to see the site before we came to the BRAD meeting. The shoreline appears to have been used as a dump, which was quite common in military circles earlier. Presidio had 7 of them, 4 of which are along the Pacific coast, and the Park Service had to clean up all but one of them. Then the one that they didn't clean up, I wish they had. But so it looks like material that was not wanted anymore, or a building that was not wanted anymore, or an object that was not wanted anymore was just chucked into Clipper Cove. There's several pieces of machinery lying around on the beach that could have come from the heating plant. It's possible that most of the debris that's visible is from demolition of the heating plant. I don't know why they would do that, but it's a possibility. There are 2 rock outcrops flanking this beach-like area. Excuse me. And on the eastern, adjacent to the eastern one, is a large tangle of rusted steel cable. Let's see. There were, as I said, parts of what appeared to be a boiler lying around. There was what looked like piping for a boiler lying around. There was lots of broken pottery, naval porcelain, in fact. It was classic military tableware. It was thick because on a ship or a vessel, the rocking and the jostling, you don't want everything breaking the first time you hit a wave. So it was all very sturdy, and there's large pieces of it all over the place. Although I couldn't find any with the Navy insignia on it. They always had that in the old days. I don't know if they do now, but they always had the insignia on each item.
Like an anchor.
Yeah. Let's see. There was a large pile of tiles that kind of looked like kitchen tiles or bathroom tiles. Again, coming from some interior. And then a bunch of fire brick. Again, leading me back to the boiler. The fire brick had, I think it was R&S stamped on it, Louisville, Kentucky. So it was either came in the hold of a ship as ballast, and got used once it arrived here as the firebox for a boiler. Otherwise, I don't know why it was here. This came from the East Coast. There was also many, many sections of fuel line lying around. And one of my questions to the Navy in the work plan is, I mean, it's tedious, but were those sections ever tested for petroleum? Because in the Presidio, it was found there was over 700,000 gallons of waste fuel in abandoned fuel lines because they had not ever been cleaned. They had just been abandoned. And so that could be a source of further contamination. We did find one of the two fuel lines, stormwater lines. Then we also found the piers. We found, and we went on an archeological dig of sorts, because we started looking for all sorts of foundations, and we found quite a few of them. It was more than it shows on the military maps. We found the foundation for the eastern pier, which was quite slender and had only wooden supports.
Well, I think just to make a little note, the point of this, just so people understand, is when you're going down there and you look at these foundations, it's not terribly obvious that these are piers, and they're both piers because they're different.
Right.
So we pretty much looked at them with a magnifying glass and go, oh, yes, indeed.
What we brought along.
But it wasn't obvious because these are two different bases, and so you think, well, if that's a pier, then what is that? Because it's different. But both piers.
But the eastern pier, from my point of view, given that there were historic buildings there that go back to before the turn of the last century, and the torpedo room, the torpedo building is still there, and that goes back to the late 1800s. It was very touching to see what looked to me like the original pier that shows up in a photo from 1894, showing ships, sail ships. They were not steam powered yet. They had sails tied up at this very slender pier. But on the western side, when we went past where the boiler plant was, there was a massive foundation and concrete piers marching out into the cove, indicating very clearly this was a major pier. This was not something like the one to the east, and was designed to carry significant weight. So my conjecture is, without further research, that it also was used to, what's the word you use when you put supplies on a ship?
When you're resupplying a ship?
There's a term, but I don't remember it. So it looked like it was designed to hold, to be able to handle a lot of heavy material, a lot of provisioning.
Oh, provisioning a ship, okay.
As well as the fuel line.
Interesting, because that would not seem to be intuitively a great location to do provisioning from, right? I mean, close to warehouses.
And not only that, but it's on YBI, which by this time, if that pier was built during the Second World War, it's on YBI, which is not used much anymore except for housing and socializing for the officers. You've got all of those piers on TI, and you've got the Fifth Street Pier, which was a major source for fueling. So what was going on? I mean, backup pier? In case Treasure Island sank?